Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Gil from Devil's Luck D&D. And you can probably tell from the title, I'm doing a bit of more of an informational series here, though I will say this is a little bit less your basics. So just kind of jumping in, what does it take to go from a cautious player to an experienced DM? And what kind of practice makes what we might call perfect, but we'll get to that, how that's kind of a misnomer in general. It sounds like a journey, doesn't it? But it isn't as hard as you might think. The overwhelming feelings of like a new rule book and thinking about how difficult it might be to learn, how you could ever come up with a full campaign, very real feelings. I think all of us had. I definitely still feel them from time to time, especially when I'm picking up something like especially new, like outside of my general wheelhouse. Um, the difference, as is usually the case in life, is time. Just time, practice, all the goals you have as far as GMing are definitely achievable. It just takes a little bit of patience on your own part and then the perseverance to do something bad at first, but get better. There are a lot, like I said earlier, there's a lot of series that can teach you the basics of D&D, Pathfinder, Call of Cthulhu, Vampire the Masquerade, Monster Hearts, any of these other TTRPGs. They can definitely kind of cover those basics. That's not what I'm aiming to do here. So, um, and they can do it honestly just as good as I can, if not better in some cases, because some people are just really fantastic teachers for that mechanical side of things. I want to talk about kind of the weird intangibles, the things that come up when you're running a table and they catch you off guard. Just the things you just would never kind of like expect to be important, or things that like are important, but they're important in a way that isn't maybe talked about quite as much. But first things first, how do we get better? Well, the only way to get better is to suck, which I know is not something we ever want to hear as people, especially as creatives, but you have to suck at first, and that will be the worst part of the process because a lot of you know what good DMs look like. A lot of people have played with good DMs. They've seen, I mean, there's tons and tons of live plays out there at this point, tons of stories. I mean, just Reddit, Twitter, Tumblr. I mean, any social media you have, you're going to see people having both good and bad stories. But you've seen what you feel like is good, and what a good DM looks like that can elicit certain feelings out of the table and have certain moments that are really impactful and that you really liked, or as a player or as a viewer. But you can't replicate that right away. Something isn't there. It's you just don't know for sure. It's time. You just have to give yourself time. I think there's a really good quote from Ira Glass that kind of fits perfectly here for creative fields in general, but it definitely fits for our needs here with game mastering. So, and it goes, nobody tells this to people who are beginners. I wish someone told me. All of us who do creative work, we get into it because we have good taste. But there's this gap. For the first couple of years you make stuff, it's just not that good. It's trying to be good, it has potential, but it's not. But your taste, the thing that got you into the game, is still killer. And your taste is why your work disappoints you. And a lot of people never get past this phase. They just quit. So, for running a tabletop game, it's basically the same thing. You know what you want to do, but it's hard to get there. And it's like the easiest, it's like the most it lesson, but it's the hardest thing to follow, right? It's easiest to say, hardest to follow. And that's just keep trying. You have to give yourself the time to be bad and to learn. You have to learn what little tricks work best for you and your table. Only on the job experience works. The improvements come with your willing to persevere and to remember that DMs that you might idolize or think were really incredible, the big ones in our spaces, or some of the big ones in our spaces, like Abria Iyengar, Matt Mercer, Brendan Lee Mulligan, etc. They all had to work to get where they are now. It took years and decades of just playing the game, having fun, and your goal may not be to put on some live performance. It may just be to make your friends laugh and smile. And only you can do that with the time that you spend around those people, knowing what they like, what you like, what kind of story you guys can tell. There are hundreds of thousands of incredible game masters out there that are all incredible in their own right, and it just took the time to get there. Even past just those ones that have big media popularity. So, what does practice look like? Practice at the end of the day means playing, getting rules wrong, having to make choices on the fly. Like I said, the basics can be handled with any number of resources. But you'll never forget the first time a player hits you with a question that has no real ruling and you have to come up with something on the fly. You have to improvise a name, you have to improvise an entire subset of the rule system. I know there's some people that will come in and be like, well, you have to do that a lot in 5th edition, right? I can't necessarily disagree with certain moments, but there's going to be times where a player is going to think outside the box because no TTRPG can ever design a box so big enough, so large, that a player won't think outside of it at one point or another. It's just, in my opinion, it's just impossible. Your players are going to surprise you at some point, and that's a good thing. So these sorts of things only come from running the game, just sort of like how college, right? I think a lot of people, especially in IT, will understand this, but I think in any field, whether it's a trade, whether it's college, whether it's retail, you can only prepare for a job so much before actually going out and do it. And you realize once you actually get there and you're working day to day, it's not what you prepared for most of the time. You have to relearn certain skills or you have to adapt. It's the same with GMing. Play the game, try out a system, maybe 2 to get your feet wet. Really, I at the first, I encourage everyone to just stick to 1. Let yourself be bad. You could even give your friends warnings. Unlike me, I didn't warn them. 11 years ago, I drug a couple of my good close friends that thankfully are still friends with me to this day into the weirdest Black Crusade game of all time. Black Crusade is a Warhammer 40,000 TTRPG. I was not familiar with at all. I had played 3.5 and I was like, yeah, no, I can pick it up. It's just another system or whatever. No, yeah, there was tons of bad rulings. This was my first time actually GMing. I created weird tension at the table because of what my expectations were, because I had bad communication and I wasn't just like seeing the game in the correct space. There were tons of things that I did wrong. So it's a natural part of the process. And now I feel much more comfortable both in that game setting and in a ton of other ones, even though there's still times where I feel like I'm always learning or my players will still surprise me on a session basis. But so how do you know you made it? Your players and your sanity. Those are the two markers, in my opinion. When those hard snap choices or story derailing moments happen, you don't get nearly as stressed. You know it's all going to be fine, and you can handle them in a mostly fluid motion. I feel like that is whenever you realize, yeah, no, I'm a lot more comfortable. This will actually happen pretty regularly on, and this is one of the rewarding sides of it. Is your players freaking out, talking about the session, planning all week long or all month long until their next session, depending on how the scheduling demons are for you. But talking in the chats and thinking about what happened and talking about it. These sorts of things are one of the most satisfying sort of reactions for me as a GM. And I think that's honestly why we play the game, to tell a story with our friends that will be well loved on whatever meandering path it might take. And these are kind of, in my opinion, these are some of the signs that, you've in quotes made it. But you're going to get there without even realizing that. You're going to arrive at that point and you're not even going to know at first until you look back and then you're able to see the journey. It's one of those things where it makes it increasingly difficult to do that because you don't always see your progress right away. But I promise you, once you get to that end, it will be worth it. To summarize, I hope that this can at least inspire one of you to go out there and to be bad. Be bad at GMing. Make mistakes. Apologize to players, yourself, the source materials, anger the dice gods, soothe the dice gods, play more games, make more memories, and just have a great time. If any of this has helped you or piqued your curiosity, I'm going to make this a small series on kind of what I was saying, like D&D, or excuse me, just GMing. But this works, this is somewhat of a D&D focus, but I do want to encapsulate other systems as well. Series on basically some skills that I think are the soft side of GMing. Um, some general kind of things like, how to handle player conflict. What happens whenever a player throws you through a hard loop? How do you kind of have these sort of improv skills to fall back on? And a couple other things that I've been kind of working on right now. So look forward to those coming out in this series. And if you ever want to see me run a game, that is also going to be on this channel. We have a kind of a short, I don't want to call it short campaign, multi-shot, whatever your verbiage of choice is, coming up here pretty soon. I believe as of recording this, our session 0 is going to be in 2 weeks. And then after that, we'll probably record the following week and then we'll start releasing them. So just kind of something fun to look out for if you are interested in that kind of thing. If you want to listen and watch in and be like, wow, Gil, you kind of suck actually. Maybe I shouldn't take your advice. Or, maybe this guy knows at least one thing he's talking about. So yeah, go ahead and check that out. That will be our first one to go through. I'm excited for it. But other than that, everyone have a great day. Stay gaming.